Survivor's guilt. The feeling of guilt that you get when you survive a traumatic event. Maybe you should have died instead of someone else, or done something more to save others. The feeling you get when you think you could have done something differently, or risked your own life to save more people. Or maybe you caused it. Maybe you caused an accident that caused someone else's death, and since you caused it, maybe you should have been the one to pass away. But instead, you survived. We see this theme predominantly with Torque and Nolo in Accelerators. You see, when it comes to survivor's guilt, Torque and Nolo are two sides of the same coin. Tone died, but Torque and Nolo not only remember the event differently, but react differently to it. Because of what they did, because of what they could have done, because they feel survivor's guilt. Enter Nolo. Thinking about Nolo more, I understand why he was such a brat at the start of Ignition. I'm pretty sure we all thought Nolo was just a brat for no reason. However, his brother had died, which led him to taking the responsibility of a leader. But there's a missing detail. Nolo actually wanted to race Torque instead of Tone, which means had Nolo raced, Tone's death could have potentially been prevented. And this is what makes us understand Nolo. He has survivor's guilt because he could have been the one to race Torque, had he insisted harder. And not only that, he thinks the cause of Tone's death is because of Torque. He thinks Torque is the murderer for his brother. And so when the race starts at the start of Ignition, we have Nolo, who wants to understandably potentially kill Torque. Kill Torque in a duel during a race, just like how Tone died. Despite knowing what happened to Tone and fearing the same thing that could happen to him, we see Nolo actively seek out multiple fights with Torque during the series. Maybe Nolo doesn't care about losing his life because he loved his brother so much anyway. So whichever the result was a win-win. Torque would die and he would still be the leader of the Teku, or Nolo dies and he still sees his brother again. Tone was his brother, probably his everything, which is why Nolo thinks he has nothing, and this race is the meaning to him. Nolo deals with survivor's guilt through rage and denial. Denial because he couldn't see that it was his brother's fault for his death, which explains why he thinks Torque is the murderer, which explains why he wants to kill Torque. It all makes sense. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have Torque. Torque, who begins to realize that he may in fact have caused Tone's death. Torque actively feels the guilt of causing Tone's death. And how does he deal with it? He tries to be better. Torque actively tries to atone for his sins, no pun intended. Instead of escalating the situation with Nolo, in every instance he tries to calm the situation. Torque tries to talk him out or avoid the conflict. We see this multiple times, before the Metro Realm and during the Metro Realm. Most importantly, along with actively trying to atone for his sins, from his perspective of course, he actively avoids that type of situation, contrasting with Nolo actively trying to find that situation. We see this when he was dueling Wild. He backs off because he could cause another death, because he doesn't want the same fate to happen to Wild. Two brothers, and one could be brotherless. This could also be the reason why Torque agrees to help Kurt and the Teku save his brother, since Nolo lost his own. Keep in mind it can also be interpreted that this whole rivalry with the Teku and Metal Maniacs, the reason for them to almost hate each other, almost stems from Tone's death. We see the respect that Taro puts out from Tone. Had Torque killed Wild, not only would Kurt and the rest of the Teku hate the Metal Maniacs, but the Metal Maniacs themselves would also disown him. It's not until the Sweeper rescue scene that Nolo begins to realize one of two things. Torque feels guilt for the death of Tone, or the crash was actually an accident. Why else would Torque save Nolo? The sweeper rescue scene was the turning point and the start of Nola's character progression, starting the healing process of moving on from the death of Tone and getting closure. Instead of raging in memory of Tone, Nola does good in the memory of Tone. Even after all this, even after Nola matures and forgives Torque, Torque still shakes his head and still thinks he is partly to blame. Not only does this show the maturity between the two characters, but it shows how their relationship is about to sprout. The character arcs between both of these characters and the theme was amazing. However, the transition for Nola forgiving Torque could have been expanded upon. Maybe through simulating Tone's crash to realize that Tone actually maybe did suck at driving. But I'm not done. Someone else has survivor's guilt. Someone who is also too young to have experienced any of this. Someone who we root for the entire series. And that man is Vert Wheeler. Vert survived everything he's been through so far, but that's just it. He survives. He doesn't win, and he certainly does not save his friend Kadeem. Vert feels this survivor's guilt in that infamous sunset scene we've analysed before, and it's eating at his heart, eating at his soul. I'm pretty sure I speak for everyone when we feel like we have that inevitable dark void in our soul, slowly consuming your heart because of something you did or could have done, and in Vert's case, it's his guilt of not saving Kadeem. Had Vert been a fraction of a second earlier, he could have saved Kadeem and saved him from the tortures of Galorum. It's a blessing in disguise that Vert never saw Kadeem after the Storm Realm, because if he did, he would be afraid of the monster he indirectly created. Maybe it's better that Vert thinks Kadeem is dead. Maybe Vert could have saved Kadeem and his humanity had he been there for him in the drone's headquarters. But this leads back to his guilt. He's not helping anybody, he couldn't even do the bare minimum. All he's just doing is just wasting time and resources at everyone else's disposal. Which is why he leaves. Why he leaves the Accelerdrome. But he does save someone. He saves Taro and the Lava Realm, coincidentally the person who caused Kadeem's death, in the same situation, flying off the track to be consumed by the realm's elements. Maybe he does it to not feel that guilt again. Maybe he does it because he could have saved Kadeem. And sometimes saving a life, saving your morals, is the most important thing. And that is survivor's guilt.